Hello friends, today we'll be looking at the newest updates to Lorcana, including their update to their website to have the new story page and the breaking exclusive that Eric Switzer did for the Lorcana narrative lead with Samantha McFerrin, and discussing exactly what this might mean, as well as giving our own hot take on what this could mean for gameplay. And yes, it's going to be quite a controversial hot take. Alright, so we're going to be starting this off with the Lorcana website. If you go over there, you'll be able to see that at the top of the page it says story. And if you click on it, it now has this lovely navigation page that has a swirl of colorful starlight appears, glowing brighter and brighter until it is all you can see. When the burst of light subsides, you find yourself in a wondrous new place. Welcome to the Great Illuminary, the center of a magical realm called Lorcana. So we've got a little bit of tidbits so far. The Illuminary summoned you here because of your magical imagination. You follow a pulsing line of light through curving hallways and numerous rooms to emerge into a vast atrium. A mechanism there towers over an open book. Sparkling down from above is a stream of colorful story stars, each containing fragments of Disney stories. So that's the first part of it. And already we've got the Illuminary, which we already knew, and the atrium, which, you know, we could kind of guess already, but they are saying, you know, vast curving hallways and that there are other rooms that are going to be able to be explored eventually in theory, but that there is a mechanism that in the, you know, video we were able to see kind of going over the book. But this is the first mention of story stars. And then if we go down, we can kind of see that mechanism over top of the book, and that's from that video from the trailer where it shows Mickey about to be, you know, summoned forward in theory. And then it goes forward to say, nearby, a unique tool catches your eye. It's an ink caster, and when you pick it up, it feels both exciting and familiar. Instinctively, you hold it high above the open book. Magical ink pulsing with energy flows through the mechanism and combines with the light from a story star on a page of the lore book in front of you, creating an image of a Disney character. With the power of your ink caster, the image rises off the page. This is a glimmer, a new version of the character that only exists in this world. As an Illumineer, you can create glimmers of characters and items to add to the lore of Lorcana, a treasure that must be preserved and protected at all costs. Soon, other Illumineers across the globe will be called to the aid of Lorcana. You'll summon glimmers to quest with you as you search for missing lore in a race against time. Only together can you protect this wondrous realm from threats. Will you answer the call? And then, of course, it has like the little photo at the end that kind of shows like the beginning of it kind of happening, which is just very exciting in my personal opinion. But it's got so much detail in here that it's just so dense, but it packs so much punch into this tiny little story that you just have to kind of comb through it and just appreciate every single word that it says. But it does kind of go over the fact that there is, the new word of the story stars and, the fragments of the Disney stories. And then it mentions the new word Inkcaster. But beyond that, we do have the confirmation of magical ink. And it confirms again glimmers, which we already knew. We already knew glimmers. And we knew that we were called Illumineers as the people that are playing the game Lorcana. And that we are going to be adding to the lore of Lorcana, which is a treasure that must be protected and preserved at all costs. So with this in mind, we're going to go over to the little exclusive and take a look there and see if we can gain any additional insight from that interview. So this was by Eric Switzer. It's from thegamer.com. And the exclusive Disney Lorcana narrative lead answers our biggest story questions. And, it starts out with obviously a very simple explanation about, backstory and who he is and how it's, it's a start of it. But I recently speculated on the lore of Lorcana based on the series of typings listed on the cards. I suggested these typings, Storyborn, Dreamborn, and Floodborn, were closely related to the art style of the characters. And the theory got the attention of Samantha McFerrin, Lorcana's narrative lead, who reached out to share some exclusive story details. And so it goes on to kind of go over what we just talked about. We first find ourselves in the Illuminary, a place of the realm, the center of the realm that houses tools we need to create glimmers, versions of Disney characters and items that only exist in Lorcana, using the Great Illuminary's lore book and a tool called the Inkcaster. We combine magical ink with story stars containing fragments of Disney stories to summon glimmers that add to the lore of Lorcana. Together, our job is to adventure across Lorcana, seeking out this valuable resource called lore to preserve and protect it against all threats. And then that's the story synopsis that we just read a minute ago, so I'm not just going to go over that again. But it does, they talk about the fact that, it leaves a lot of questions, like what's outside of the Illuminary, and that's what I was just saying. Like, it mentions the fact that there are great hallways and, all this other stuff. It's a world, essentially. Lorcana is a world. What is lore, and what are we protecting it from? Taking a step back from specific details, how will the story of Lorcana be told even? And that's the interesting thing to take from this, I think, is that it's, a little bit in between, like, the full-on complex storytelling of something like Magic the Gathering that has, like, the full narrative approach and, the very simplistic Pokemon. So the story will be woven throughout the cards, social media, and other materials, which kind of makes sense because we've already been seeing a lot of social media interaction with, the people from Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. They've been very in on being involved on everything and showing everything. So it makes us a lot of sense that they would be feeding bits of what Lorcana actually is throughout the social media pages and then through other materials. So, and then they go on to say that in the first chapter, the Illuminator's Trove will reveal info about who created Lorcana and the Great Illuminary. We'll continue to sprinkle story magic across various platforms as we unveil more. Now, one interesting thing is that there was initially a page before this one on the Lorcana website that was briefly up for like half a day, that was talking about like a curator, but that was, and it was in like French and German, and then it was eventually put into English, and then it was taken down, and then this is the actual one that was put up, and there's no mention of a curator at all. So when the narrative lead is saying that the first chapter's Illuminator is going to talk more about who created Lorcana and the Great Illuminary, it leads the question to whether or not they scrapped the original story and that was just like an old placeholder, or if they kind of had that information there and they decided to put something different in there, and they're like, we're just going to put something different here, and then we're going to have that story specific only to the Illuminator's Trove. So we'll have to find out when the Illuminator's Trove comes out exactly what's in there and what the story ends up being. So they don't allude to any more specific supplemental story materials like the novels of magic, comics, or short stories, but it's clear that Lorcana will have some kind of ongoing narrative that evolves over time. For now, McFerrin is only willing to divulge a few key details. And of course, they've been so tight-lipped on everything. It's very hard to get anything out of them that they do not want to put out there. And as a matter of fact, with the steel card, that was them bowing down to peer pressure, which was a lovely little joke that they changed their social media plans because everybody obviously was memeing about wanting a steel card, so they changed their plans. That's the first time that they've said anything about deliberately changing plans, because otherwise everything else has gone directly according to their specific plans, and they have a very clear set guideline on where they want things to be leaked, how they want them to be leaked, and they are obviously the masters of these things. She describes Lorcana as a realm of imagination with lots to explore outside the Great Illuminary. What exactly is out there remains a mystery for now, but one interesting detail McFerrin shared is that everything we see and experience in the game exists within the world of Lorcana. And this is what's interesting and what I find very... I want to see where it goes, is that... in other words, when the art shows a character in a particular environment, such as Hades on a golden throne of Olympus or Rockstar Stitch performing on stage of a concert, those are all places that exist in Lorcana rather than a reflection of some kind of alternate universe these glimmers are from. It seems like we won't just be creating copies of characters with the Inkcasters and Story Stars, but the entire worlds these characters inhabit too, all within the realms of Lorcana. Maybe this will open ways for location theme cards later down the line, he suggests. But what this kind of gets to me is that, this was kind of a previous thought process that you were bringing a copy out, that you were bringing, an alternate dimension, that it was kind of like a portal almost. but this is basically saying that these are real places. This isn't, you know, a reflection. This is all real in the story. That this isn't just, oh, I'm going to have a hologram of these characters fighting. These are these actual ink blots being created into characters on the page through magic. Then, of course, there's the interesting things about the Storyborns, the Dreamborns, and the Floodborns. And from there, it's kind of like just confirmation from what we basically already knew, that the Storyborns are representative of, you know, the stories. They're exactly the way that they show up in the story. It's not necessarily saying that they are 100%, you know, tried and true. There is no interpretation from the story, but, you know, they are the characters in the story. Whereas the Dreamborn is more like there's something different about it, whether it's the wardrobe having the you know, the more elegant dresses and the purple instead of the green amulet on the chest of drawers, or Captain Hook being Captain Sword hand. That they are, you know, the slight reimaginings. They're the vague ones. They're the ones that are kind of out there. They're shifted in some way from the dream. And of course, we don't get any answer on the Floodborns, you know, because it looks like we're not even going to get an answer at the end of this set either, because as it says down here, that the origin of the Floodborn, where they come from, how they come to be in Lorcana, and why they all share the shift mechanics will be explored in later sets. So we're not even going to end up getting it at the end of the first set. So by the time all of the cards are out there and we can see, you know, all 204 cards out there, we still aren't going to have a complete answer on what a Floodborn is. We can just speculate, apparently. And that's good that there's still going to be speculation room to go off of, but it's also, you know, a little tease, so to speak. Then it goes, McFerrin's also unforthcoming about the purpose of lore and the forces that threaten Lorcana, but she does say that each piece of lore is a fragment of a larger story, and that each must be, and that while much of it is kept safe in the halls of Lorcana, while others have been scattered throughout the Inklands. Keep these locations in mind as the story unfolds. Speaking of unfolding narrative, McFarlane says that each set continues the story forward. And we already knew that there were going to be, you know, 4 sets a year. And it does say that basically here that the first, you know, block is going to be of those 4 sets. So the next portion from here is basically that the designers have plenty of leeway in their experimentation with Disney characters, and can divert drastically from the source material, but that all of the characters, the items, and the actions are based on existing Disney properties. But she also mentions that action cards like the recently revealed Dragonfire represent actions taken by the Glimmers, but they can also be actions taken by us, the Illumineers. So I tried to rack my head up one side and down the other what that could end up meaning. I am apparently not creative enough to think about how we could be in the story, but also be representative of existing Disney properties. So it'll be a pleasant surprise when I see the first card that is representative of an Illumineer action. Disney characters and items each have a role to play in the overarching story of Lorcana. Many questions remain about which direction it'll go, but knowing there's a long-term narrative plan for Lorcana tells me Ravensburger understands how important the story is for Disney fans and will definitely be finding out a lot more about who's threatening the realm of Lorcana when the game launches this August. And that's true. I mean, we'll definitely be finding out so much more, even in the next coming weeks. When spring comes, for instance, we should even be knowing more. But one thing that I think is important to be kind of taking away from this is that they say a lot of things in here that could be interpreted different ways. And this is kind of where my hot take comes from, I guess. They use the word lore a lot, and they use the story stars, and they use the magical ink, and they use the ink caster, and then they talk about the ink lands, and where was it? Each piece of lore is a fragment of a larger story, and that while much of it is kept safe in the halls of Lorcana, others have been scattered throughout the Inklands. So I guess that's where I will shift it over, in that let's take a look at one of the recent cards. Here's Gantu, Galactic Federation Captain. And, he's the most recent steel card. Most recent card in general, but he's the most recent steel card. And, he has the stereotypical flourish up top, and the little hexagon with the 8 up top, and what we all assume will be, the power and toughness, and then these little diamonds over here, and then these little diamonds over here. And if you notice with the flourish, there's also these little diamonds poking out over here. So let's take a step back a second and go back to the beginning. A swirl of colorful starlight appears, growing brighter and brighter until it is all you can see. When the burst of light subsides, you find yourself in a wondrous new place. So there's a swirl of starlight. Okay? And sparkling down from above is a stream of colorful story stars, each containing fragments of Disney stories. So there are story stars. And it goes again to say that when you get down there is an ink caster. And when you have that ink caster, you hold it above the book, and magical ink pulses and flows down through the mechanism and combines with the light from the story star onto a page from the lore book in front of you, creating an image of a Disney character. And then that image rises off of the page, and it's a glimmer. So, when you have these glimmers, you are able to add to the lore of Lorcana. And what is the lore of Lorcana? The lore of Lorcana is a treasure that must be preserved and protected at all costs. Okay? So, you'll summon glimmers to quest with you as you search for missing lore. So this tells us that there are 3 different things. There are story stars, there is magical ink, and there is lore. And it does tell us this. And the glimmer from the Lorcana, from the page of the Lorcana book, is the card that you're on. So when you have a card like Gantu, for instance, you're looking at a page of the lore book of Lorcana, and you are summoning it. So how do you summon a book? Well, you summon it by utilizing the items in the top corner. And you need to have the swirl of the starlight, and you need to have the hexagon, which is the ink caster's light for the mechanism. Now here's where the hot take comes in. You see these little triangles on the swirl where they're all swirling together. There's little ones over here too. Then you see that, and you see that. And you see how there's a little whiteness over on that over here. My little cursor won't show up, but over here. That, to me, looks like a star when they are saying that they are story stars. And it is saying that there's a bright light, that you're following that pulsing bright light, and that they're mixing together. So here's the theory. Everybody has said these are the win condition. Everybody has said it is proven that these are the win condition because of Mulan and Hades, because of the way that it is said on the backs of the Mulan and Hades, the gift box with Mulan and Hades. But that's why I said this is a hot take. I don't think that's accurate. So let's take a look at it again. Mulan says a true leader is, this is the back of the box. A true leader is not one who directs, but one who inspires the undaunted courage of this familiar heroine spurs her allies to reach for victory and makes others think twice about getting in her way. Her exact specific one is lead by example. During your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, your other characters get +1 pip this turn. And previously everyone has been saying +1 lore this turn. Under the assumption that these would be victory points. However, it does make it a little odd that you would be scoring victory points at the end of your turn. So, how does it work with Hades? Hades is saying again, this character gets +1 for every other villain character you have in play. So that would be really awesome if you get 1 victory point for every villain you have in play. But that could be very overly powerful depending on how everything else works. If you only need 10 victory points, but you have, 4 Cruella de Vil's and 4 Captain Hooks, which, yes, I understand is not possible because it's a 2 character limit, but we're just going off of, the idea of their power costs, not their actual colors. Then you've got 8, and suddenly, he's got 8 on just that one character. So it's never really sat well with me that these would be victory points. So let's take a look at the fact that Hades does say he has the unflourished portion, which a lot of people have, been saying, maybe it means that he does this, or maybe it means he does that. There's no definitive answer on what it means that he does not have the flourish. But, it was able to be figured out that through later cards that you pay the same amount to shift. And that's the thing, is that unflourished payment is the same amount that you see with, say, Stitch or Aurora. And these are the Floodborn characters, the characters that are apparently getting a rush of ink into them, that are overrunning them. And what is the ink? The ink is from the magical ink from the mechanism overhead. So the magical ink from that mechanism, and you've got that little mechanism going down over top of it. So this is basically saying that you have to pay 3 of that specific color. So where's this starlight coming from? How do you pay this starlight if I'm saying that these little pips are not lore? I am saying that those are the starlight. What I am saying is that you will end up paying these, that all of these can be tapped instead of challenging or questing, that you would be able to utilize your characters to tap those to pay for other things. And that is why it is, you have that little indication that there's that little triangle. It has that designated spot off to the side, and because that is basically a cost indicator. It's a separate, it is a separation. It is a cost indicator, and that is how much that card is worth. Essentially, it is worth 2, and that is what you can use the tracker token for. Is you can say, all right, I have used 1 and put it right on top of the 1. And then you can play a card and then move it down to the next one and play another card and move it off and move it to the next one that you're going to be tapping, and just track it that way. That's what the tracker token is for, is you are literally tracking how many of these lore points you are using as you're tapping them. And that's why with Hades, where he says, surround him with villains and watch him gain a lot of lore fast, they're not saying that the little pips on the side are the lore. What they're saying with that is that when you utilize him and you get him onto the field, every villain that you have allows you to only tap Hades. You only have to tap Hades, and you'll have that X amount. And you'd still be able to tap the other villains that you have on your field. That's why you gain a lot of lore fast, because you can still use your other characters, your other villains to quest. You can still use them to do other things without tapping them to gain that starlight power. That is why you're gaining a lot of lore fast. You are getting a lot of your points by challenging people. You are getting your points by challenging the characters. You are getting the points by doing whatever the other victory conditions end up being in the game. That is what the conditions are going to end up being. And so by having him be a, let's tap this one character and there's, say, 6 points on him that you can then spend. You don't have to tap 3 other characters on the field. You can let them do something else. They're free to do whatever else you want to do with that character. You don't have to tap them for their resources. You can do other things. That is why it works. Surround him with other villains and watch him gain a lot of lore fast. And then it's the exact same thing with Milan. And the reason why your other characters only get the +1 for the 1 turn, it allows them to, she banishes the character. Okay? And all of the other characters are there on the sidelines. And you now have an extra 1 point that you can tap them for. so they can reach for victory, because you can tap them to go and put extra things on the field because she just ran and rushed in and banished something. That's how that works. Now, that could very well be complete nonsense. It doesn't explain exactly how the first part, how the magic of the, magical ink is going to be generated. It does not explain that. And that's one of the reasons I've had this theory for a very long time. I just haven't actually put it out there as an actual video because I haven't had anything to truly back it up, other than just my own personal opinion on it. But with this, it does, more solidify the opinion that this is the way it's going to be working. And basically the only thing that is left over is how you're going to be generating the magical ink, how the magical ink portion of it is going to be generated, because that's the part that's not completely out there. Is it going to be that you have a set amount at the beginning, like you're going to have 10 at the beginning, and you're going to be, you have to replenish it with something. There's going to be a card where it's like add 1, or is there going to be something where you get 1 per turn? I know Chris had that suggestion that it was going to be something where on the first turn you got 1, and then on the second turn, where like on the first turn you could get 1 and you would put it in towards your pool of amethyst, and then in the second pool you could choose you could put it into your pool of ruby, and you could do that way, and you could choose the pool that you put your magical ink into, or that it could just be a colorless ink pool, and that it's just the fact that you have just the 2 colors doesn't matter what, that's the reason that you're limited to only 2 colors of, in your deck, is because there is no other hindrance for your, like there's nothing that says like you have to have 1 ruby, 1 sapphire, 1 emerald, 1, steel, mana kind of thing. It's just 1 magical ink, 1 starlight, 1 story star. Or you have to have 1 magical ink and 3 story stars, which is kind of the way that I'm thinking that it's going to work, is that you have to have 1 magical ink and then the rest of it is story stars, and that only the ones without that flourish are the ones that have to be in magical ink only. That's the way that I'm personally thinking of it. But like I said, it was a very hot take. It was based upon both the information that was gathered off of the story website, as well as the information that was provided with the gamer exclusive information. I know there's still a lot of information that was put into that article. There was stuff about the ink casters, the ink lands, the ink lands in and of itself. There's a whole bunch of things that could be theorized about Mickey and Aladdin possibly being from the ink lands. But for now, I'm personally not big on speculation. Neither of us are, which is why we haven't been big on the speculation front. We've kind of set back on it and just kind of been more on the news front. But this is us, I guess, shooting our shots, you could say, as far as a speculation video goes. So if you sat here through the entire thing, I know it was a very long video, but I wanted to be very thorough in what I thought and why I thought it. So if you did sit through the entire thing, thank you. But let us know what you thought of it, why we're wrong. And I hope you have a magical day, but you have a great time with all of Lorcana's news that's going to be coming up in the coming weeks, because there is so much now that we've gotten the floodgates starting to open, and it's just going to be getting better and better, especially once we get spring. So stick around, and maybe we'll be right, maybe we'll be wrong, but if we're right, you'll let us know, and if we're wrong, you'll let us know.